What's up guys, Chris the Greek Weeb here again with my very first 4 Nights of the Apocalypse Theory video. Now I've been promising this type of video for a while now, ever since the series first started, and I think I finally have enough material mentioned in the manga to give me an idea for a theory. And as you can probably tell from the thumbnail, this theory is the death of the 7 deadly sins. Before I get into this actual theory video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell for updates on future videos. If you like me doing 4 Nights of the Apocalypse content outside of my weekly manga reviews, then please let me know. The more likes and views this channel gets, the more I know that you guys will enjoy my content, and YouTube's algorithm will promote these videos to a much wider audience, and I really do appreciate the support. And don't forget, I am doing the weekly manga reviews for 4 Nights of the Apocalypse continually, so I will probably leave a link to it up to the corner right up above. But without further ado, let's get into my theory. So within the 4 Nights of the Apocalypse, a few key elements of the story, especially within the most recent chapter, has given me an idea that this series will inevitably come to the conclusion that the 4 Nights of the Apocalypse might end up being the ones to kill the 7 deadly sins. Or it could in fact be Arthur, who has been set up as the villain. This theory is that regardless, by the time the series will end, the 7 deadly sins will most likely perish. Now, any type of legacy series to help raise the stakes would end up killing off a massive character from the previous series, whether it was the previous protagonist, supporting character, etc., rival, or maybe even a villain that had survived the previous series. If that character is killed, then it helps boost up the stakes for how the series will end up concluding, thus giving our new protagonists a much bigger goal and learning curve so that they can eventually overcome this new obstacle. And with everything that has been given to us, I shall now explain the evidence that has been given to us from the very beginning that the 4 Nights of the Apocalypse, or King Arthur himself, will be the ones to kill the 7 deadly sins. Now, we all know that the 4 Nights of the Apocalypse, from around chapter 5 or 6, have been given specific details on how to identify them. Obviously, Percival has the wing-like verdant hair. We have someone that has good and evil in their eyes, obviously referring to Tristan, the child of Meliodas and Elizabeth, being him half demon and half goddess. One with a golden aura, which, after looking into it, could be possibly Lancelot, the child of Bon and Elaine, since he does have like blondish golden hair, and someone with no fixed appearance, which could potentially be the child of King and the Anne, or maybe even Zeldris and Gelda. It would be thematically relevant if it was a child of King and the Anne, because if the children of the 7 deadly sins end up becoming the most powerful warriors in the land of Britannia, and are so destined to take down King Arthur, it would make sense that their parents would be the other most powerful characters in the series. The prophecy of the 4 Nights of the Apocalypse is that they will be the ones to bring down King Arthur himself. And from the previous series, King Arthur has obtained the power of chaos, which can in fact warp and reshape reality to a great extent. We see this in the very early chapters, around chapter 6 or 7, where we see Pelgart entering a bizarre realm, which is more or less Camelot, since Sin the Fox had said that Camelot is both here and not here, thus showing us that Camelot itself is most likely in another pocket dimension created by King Arthur in this power of chaos, as we see the warped area, the warped roads, the circular Gothic architecture of what seems to be a giant castle or town, and the chaos beasts that seem to be meant as guards. So if Arthur truly wanted to unleash his power of chaos, he could in fact create creatures possibly on the same level as Cath, who had given the original 7 deadly sins minus Escanor. Huge spoilers for the 7 deadly sins if you have not watched the 7 deadly sins up to this current point in the anime or manga. You have been warned for this massive spoiler. Escanor died in the battle against the Demon King using every bit of his soul power, magical power, and the power of sunshine to the max to help the 7 deadly sins finally take down the Demon King, which also allowed Merlin to free Chaos, thus bringing Arthur back into life, making him the new King of Chaos. And with all 6 of the sins, even with King Arthur, had a hard time fighting Cath due to the fact that he was warping reality around them, though not physically affecting the sins themselves, showing some sort of limit to how much Cath could do. But by the end of the 7 Deadly Sins, Arthur has 100% of the power of chaos, thus meaning that he can do whatever the hell he wants if he so chooses, or within the power that he himself could use. It's been 16 years, so it's very possible that King Arthur himself can use the power of chaos to a much wider degree. What really helps this theory is the fact that we learned in chapter 12 that the Knights of Camelot have this ideal that all the other races must cease to exist or cannot exist alongside humans. King Arthur himself did not have this ideology that I knew of from the 7 Deadly Sins due to his close friendship and relationship with the 7 Deadly Sins, who are all basically from other races. So something very significant could have happened that twisted his worldview, and possibly he was corrupted by the powers of chaos. So with this gives him primary motivation to take down the 7 Deadly Sins, who are at this point the biggest obstacles to him, as they were basically the ones to take down the Demon King, and for all we know, during that 16-year time skip, they might have dealt with the Supreme Deity, as we've seen from the Cursed by Light trailer and the poster. It's very possible that the Supreme Deity might play a role in that very film. Aside from Arthur's motivation to remove all the other races from Britannia, which I will explain how he might possibly do that later on in the video, it comes to make sense why he would have to kill the 7 Deadly Sins. Obviously, Meliodas, King Diane, Bon, Elizabeth, and Gother would not want this to happen, as they had fought the Demon King and his army to help ensure peace among all the races and end the Holy War, which, by the end of the Holy War, all the races were basically all friends. And even as we've seen in the Echo Gorge arc, Ordo, a human who was from Camelot and a master herbalist, took in a wayward giant girl and treated her, as well as all the other fairies that were in that forest, and all the other creatures, showing that he does in fact care about the other races, and it shows that the other races can in fact learn to love and live along each other. Now, I said why King Arthur would in fact want to take down the 7 Deadly Sins, as they are the most prominent obstacle in his way, as the 4 Knights are still very young, and at this point most likely don't hold the candle to the current level of the 7 Deadly Sins, as they have most likely begun to get stronger during the 16-year time skip. But what I think will actually spur the 7 Deadly Sins onwards to face King Arthur, after what presumably they have been trying to keep a distance from each other despite differing views, and this might get confirmed or debunked in future chapters. Percival in chapter 14, along with his group, have discovered one of the 3 pieces of the Coffin of Eternal Darkness, and it is shown that the Knights of Camelot are searching for this very same artifact. In the original 7 Deadly Sins, this was used by the Goddess clan, as well as the other 3 races, the humans, the giants, and the fairies, to seal away the demon race, to more or less end or postpone the Holy War for around 3,000 years, until the seal was broken by Fraudrin, one of the substitute 10 commandments that had taken the place of Meliodas after he had betrayed his clan during the Holy War. So this goes to show that Arthur might end up using the Coffin of Eternal Darkness to make that sudden preview from the beginning of the 7 Deadly Sins that states that the story takes place before the human and non-human worlds were forever divided. It would make sense that basically he would want to use the Coffin of Eternal Darkness to seal away the demons, the goddess, giants, and fairy races, possibly separating the world or just placing them in an eternal seal where they are stuck for an indefinite amount of time or perhaps forever, thus causing King Arthur to have to use the full power of chaos to ensure the 7 Deadly Sins cannot get in his way, as they are the most immediate threat to his plans, thus giving us a climactic battle between the Sins and Arthur, leading to Arthur brutally killing all the Sins. It's possible that maybe 1 or 2 of the Sins could survive. My money is most likely on Gother and Bon, as Bon has been shown to basically survive all of Purgatory due to him previously being immortal and making himself the strongest and most durable human alive. He might still be able to die, but himself and Escanor fought, basically tag team with King to fight the Demon King. So honestly, it's mainly due to favoritism, but if any Sin would survive, I would have to be Bon or Gother most likely, since Gother is in fact a doll, and if King Arthur is very confident in his powers, he might just end up letting Gother go without realizing it. Though, The honest-to-God real possibility is that he ends up killing all the sins on the spot, with possibly Elizabeth surviving to basically help train and guide the Four Knights of the Apocalypse. Now, the second portion of this theory, which is honestly the worst and saddest case scenario for the death of the Seven Deadly Sins, back in chapter 13 of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse, we are shown that the Knights of Camelot have this item, most likely created by Merlin and King Arthur, called the Chaos Staff, which is given to all the Knights of Camelot, each given a particular portion of the power of chaos. And as we've seen in the Echo Gorge arc, it was used to mutate Ordo into a being of pure chaos. Though still maintaining a bit of his willpower, it was still under the complete control and command of the wielder that transformed him, and it was much stronger and gained some sort of magical powers, or increased the magical powers that he had to a twisted degree. So the worst case scenario is to get rid of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse before they're strong enough to take down King Arthur. Arthur, or perhaps one of his strongest members, maybe if Merlin betrays the Seven Deadly Sins, she will help use the power of chaos to mutate and alter the forms of the sins, turning them into mindless chaos creatures under the complete control of Arthur. Now, I honestly don't want to believe this due to the fact that when in the Chaos arc, Kath and Arthur were changing the world around him, Kath could have done this to the Seven Deadly Sins. However, it might have been due to the fact that Kath did not have the full power of chaos, which made it so that he could not alter the sins, only really mess with their minds and give them access to possible futures to just keep them frozen in place so that he can potentially kill them right away. Arthur has 100% of the power of chaos, so if Arthur, and to an extension Merlin, if she does decide to betray her friends, I mean, she did technically do that before by reinstating the curse on Elizabeth just so that Meliodas and the rest can kill the Demon King and help release chaos from its seal, could very well, in fact, affect Meliodas and the rest, turning on them and turning them into chaos creatures. And the worst case scenario would be that for the five sins, if Merlin is not one of them, if Arthur decides to sacrifice Merlin, seeing that she has outlived her usefulness, and Merlin more or less agrees to this as her ultimate end, due to her devotion to chaos and knowledge, believing that she has gained all the knowledge she possibly could and feeling satisfied, could very well be one of these chaos creatures, and their magic would be completely and utterly triple, doubled, whatever you can call it, thus causing the knights and possibly other holy knights of Britannia that allied with the sins, maybe even Zeldris, Meliodas' brother, and Elizabeth, the wife of Meliodas, and even Elaine, the wife of Ban and sister of King, would have to fight back and all work together to eventually just straight up kill the people that they care about. Tristan and Lancelot would have to kill their own fathers in cold blood to save Britannia and to end their suffering, as if Arthur himself, completely corrupted and with no real remorse, changes the sins without the aid of any other object, the only real way to bring their parents back would have to be by killing Arthur or causing him himself to undo the chaosification. I'm going to call this chaosification just for the sake of it, in order to bring them back. But it's very possible that since Arthur has full control of chaos, he might end up using it to make some sort of magical spell, making it so that this transformation on the sins is permanent. Thus being the only way to honestly free them would be to kill them. And this would be a way to both show the strength of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse, but also give them the true tragedy of killing their own parents. Percival has already had to witness the death of his grandfather by the hands of his father. At this point, Percival might have to help his new friends kill their parents, or perhaps try and convince them that there was still hope. But with no hope left, they'd have no choice but to kill the sins, thus making a very tragic and honestly horrific end to not just the stars and favorite characters of the previous series, but be a tragic loss for Britannia and everyone trying to fight the evil that is most likely King Arthur. But yeah, that is honestly my theory for the Four Knights of the Apocalypse and how it could eventually enter its final act. The 7 deadly sins, for the sake of the story, they do have to die. Either maybe half of them, most of them, or all of them, to show the gravity of the situation that Arthur himself is creating, and to show how much strength they need in order to face King Arthur himself, as well as solidify King Arthur as a true villain, and help really bring home and bring the prophecy to light that the Four Knights of the Apocalypse will have to defeat and destroy King Arthur. Now, I know this was still very early on in the series of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse to even come up with this crazy theory, but let's all remember that this happens a lot with sequel series where the previous main cast, most of them or all of them, end up dying. For the very majority of the part, they at least kill off the protagonist of the previous series. So I very much see at least Meliodas being killed in this series at some point, perhaps to act as some sort of motivation and source of revenge for Tristan. But also Lancelot, the same thing could be for Bond. And it would just honestly piss off all 7 Deadly Sins fans, everyone in the community, to see fan favorite characters dying. I mean, Escanor dying was just straight up shocked the entire 7 Deadly Sins community. Everyone thought that he was going to be saved at the last minute, but he died. I mean, in the end, it was foreshadowed for a long time, and it was somewhat a proper death. I was satisfied with the fact that Escanor died a satisfactory death, true to himself as a character and to the risks of using his own power, with no plot armor, with him going out pretty much the most powerful character in the series. But that's honestly all I have to say about this theory video. The 7 Deadly Sins, for the sake of the story, eventually have to die. Now, I don't see this happening for perhaps hundreds of chapters down the road, maybe right before the final act of the series, or maybe one of the Knights of Camelot or Arthur himself straight up kills one of the sins as a show of force and resolve of his plan, and then he mutates and kills the rest of the sins. Either way, Arthur himself will have to be the one to kill the sins, or the 4 knights and possibly their allies and friends will have to end up being the ones to kill the sins if they are corrupted by Arthur's chaos and are unable to be returned back to normal. With all that said and done, I hope you guys enjoyed this theory video. I honestly want to do more theory videos in the future, and I know it's still very early for me to make a theory video for the ending of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse, but I think this is something that everyone's had in the back of their minds since we were given the idea that King Arthur and the 4 knights are meant to fight from the very beginning of the series, and the fact that the 7 Deadly Sins have been mentioned in the series at this point, and their children have been more or less been mentioned in very vague ways to be the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse alongside Percival. So I do see this as a very high and likely possibility for, at the very least, the final act of the story, or at least leading up to the final act, where the 4 knights will have to take down Arthur for good. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this theory video. I hope I did not trigger people by proclaiming that the sins will have to die, and these are honestly the very 2 most likely ways for the sins to die in the series, either by fighting King Arthur himself, or by dying by the hands of their own children, just so they could be free from this corrupted power of chaos. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope to make more theory videos like this in the future, and I will continue to make weekly Four Knights of the Apocalypse manga chapter review videos for the foreseeable future. And with all that said and done, like the video, hit subscribe, and I hope you all have an awesome day.